Okay, so before we go over the assignment that was due on Friday, I just want to give a couple general details about assignment submission. So, if you would, it would be very helpful if you could submit assignments either as Word docs or PDFs. Word is free through UVM software. If any of you don't have it, you can just download it for free on the website. PDFs are super easy to save. It's just that much easier when I get them to look at them, make sure they're all correct. If you have no opportunity to type up your assignments, if you don't have a laptop or computer available to you, it's fine if you take pictures, but if there's any way you could just put those pictures inside a Word doc and then send them to me, that would be fantastic. It's just hard for my computer to open up different types of image files, especially the .heic. I've gotten a couple of those and my computer just won't do it, so I can't check to make sure that you're doing the homework, that you're understanding everything, and I can't check it off. So please send Word docs or PDFs if at all possible. If not, let me know and we can work something out together. Okay, the next thing I want to talk to you about is, I know this is a really hard time for a lot of you, and believe me, it is for everyone. But if you have any trouble getting an assignment in on time, or if for some reason, for instance, you're being kicked out of your dorm right away, or you have to leave and travel home, or if you're caring for a sick relative, maybe you yourself are sick, just let me know. I can give you an extension on the assignment. Latin is not as pressing as everything else that might be going on in your life, so please just be in contact with me and let me know so that I can give you that extension and make sure that we're all working together to get through this as best we can. So that's just some general updates on the situation. Now I'm going to go over the assignment for Friday. So the object of this assignment was to practice with participles, infinitives, and finite verbs, determining which one is which, and translating, or not translating, but parsing in order to help you with your translating. So the first one on the list was aggreditor. This is a finite verb, and you can tell that from the fact that it ends in itor, one of 6 endings. So if it has one of those 6 endings, the singular and plural, first, second, and third person, it's definitely a finite verb. So any of those 6 endings means it's a finite verb. And here it's third person singular, which we know from itor on your chart. It's present tense. It is active and indicative. It's active because it's a deponent verb, as I put in your assignment, so it can never be passive. The next one we have on the list is agredientem. So I put the dashes on the words in your list so that you would know what the ending is and what the verb part is. So you have aggred, you see that it's from the same verb as the one we had before, aggreditor, and then your ending, entem. So since this whole thing is the ending, and it has an nt in the middle, and then a third declension adjective ending, it must be a present participle. That nt makes it present, and the adjective ending means it's a participle. So here we have a present participle. All present participles are active. We don't have a passive present participle, so it must be active. It's deponent, so it'd be active anyway, but present participles are always active. It's singular, which we know from em, that third declension ending is singular accusative. It could be either masculine or feminine because it's third declension and there's no way to tell. It could not be neuter, however, because if it was neuter, it'd be the same as the nominative, so it'd be aggrediens, because neuter, nominative, and accusative are always the same. So it must be masculine or feminine. Hopefully the next one, dant, is familiar to you. It's one of the first verbs we had, that do, dare, but I thought it might be tricky for some people because it does have that nt, so you might get confused with a present participle. But here, note the nt is at the end, so that shows that it is a finite verb, because that nt means it's a third person plural nt, as opposed to the one we had before, agredientem. It was nt and then an adjective ending. But if nt is at the end, it is a finite verb. So third person, plural, present, active, indicative, just your regular ost, mustis, nt here. Okay, the next one, venturum esse. Here it has an esse, so it must be some form of the infinitive. And if you want to know what form of the infinitive, you look at this form. So you have went, which is from that fourth principal part, but then urum at the end here means it's future. You have that you, meaning future. So venturum esse must be a future infinitive, and it's going to be the future active infinitive because, as I told you probably a couple times, the future passive infinitive is kind of a fake made up form, so I'll never give it to you in an assignment. You'll only ever see the future active infinitive. Polycator is next. So you have that tor ending, so it's going to be just like egredator, our first one. So it'll be third singular tor, present, active, indicative. Again, it's active because it's deponent, therefore cannot be passive. And it's a finite verb because you have one of those 6 endings there. Proficiscator, same exact thing. We have tor at the end. It's third singular present active indicative, finite verb for the same reasons as egredator and polycator. Next we have dato. So this one might be a little bit tricky if you're just looking at the ending. So that O ending, you might think, well, that looks like first person singular OST, this is the O, but in reality it's not, because I gave you what principal part it comes from. So here I told you it's from the fourth principal part, and as we know, the fourth principal part is all perfect and pluperfect passive forms. So if it's from that fourth principal part, it cannot be the present active indicative first person singular O. It has to be something different. So dot from do dare is the fourth principal part, and then we have an O at the end. So this must be the adjective ending O instead of the verb ending O. So here, perfect passive participle, we know it's a perfect passive participle because it comes from that fourth principal part, and it doesn't have an urus, indicating future, so it must be perfect passive. And so then you have to figure out what that O is in your adjective chart. So the O is the masculine or neuter, ablative or dative, singular. So that long O indicating masculine, neuter, ablative, dative, singular, as opposed to the O that you would expect from a present indicative first person singular verb. All right, next we have demicit. So again, that IT here indicates it's a finite verb because it's one of our 6 endings. But the demicit, altogether, you might think, well, IT could be a present tense ending, but because I told you that it's from the third principal part, it must be a perfect ending, that isti id ending. So third principal part must be perfect active, and indeed it is the perfect active indicative, third person singular, finite verb. So the next one we have is pergerent. Again, you might be fooled by this NT and think maybe present participle, but then you have to think, well, there's no adjective ending at the end, it ends in NT, so it's probably the NT of OST mustis nt, and indeed it is, so it's a finite verb. So then you have to figure out what's going on before the NT. So the NT indicates third person plural because it's the bottom of the chart. But then what is this pergere doing? So I gave you that it's the second principal part, which usually gives us the infinitive, but it also gives us the imperfect subjunctive forms. So if you have what looks like an infinitive, but then with your personal endings at the end indicating a finite verb, then it's probably the imperfect subjunctive. And here it's an imperfect active subjunctive because you have NT as opposed to NTUR, which would be the passive form. So third person plural, imperfect active subjunctive, finite verb. Next we have confirmarent, which is doing the exact same thing. So we have confirmara and then NT. So it's that NT of the third person plural. Confirmara looks like an infinitive, so it's going to be imperfect subjunctive active because we have an infinitive plus the ending NT, making it a finite verb. Okay, for suspicantes, we again have that NT, but here it's followed by an adjective ending. So here it is that present participle NT. So we have a present participle. Remember, present participles are always active, so you can just go ahead and say active. And that es, third declension ending, could be either nominative or accusative plural, and it's either masculine or feminine. Because it's third declension, we don't know. Right. Next we have scriptum est. So scriptum is from the fourth principal part, meaning that it's some sort of perfect or pluperfect passive form, and it has a form of est here, indicating that it is the perfect passive. So remember, if it had an erat here, it would be the pluperfect passive. If it had nothing here, it would just be the perfect passive participle, but because it has an est, it is the perfect passive finite verb. So est indicates third person singular, which you know from your forms of sum es est, third person singular, and it is indicative because this is not a subjunctive form. Next we have cogitabis. So cogitabis, we have that bis ending, indicating that it is a finite verb. We don't have anything that looks like a participle in there. And bis, we have bo, bis, bit. So bis is second person singular, and that be plus an is indicates future active, and it is indicative because there's no future subjunctive. Okay, petas is as at the end. It's a finite verb, that ost, so second person singular. It is present because it comes from that first principal part. Active because it's not a passive ending. And if it was passive, you have ris, aris. And it is subjunctive here. The reason it's subjunctive is peto, petera is a third conjugation verb. So if you had the indicative, it would be petis, but because you have the a here, it's from we fear a liar in the third conjugation. So petas means it is subjunctive. Okay, essa, hopefully we're pretty used to seeing by now. It's from sum esse fui. So essa is the second principal part. It is the infinitive. It has no personal endings here, so it must be the infinitive. And it is the present active infinitive, which you just know from the fact that it is sum esse and then fui in the third principal part. Okay, judicatus es. So this is very similar to scriptum est, which we had above, but here we have es as opposed to est, so sum es est. So we have second person singular is a finite verb because we have this ending. And as we had above with scriptum, judicatus is that fourth principal part, so it's the perfect passive form, and it is indicative. So one thing to note, we had scriptum above and judicatus here, and the gender of this ending is just depending on what the subject of the sentence here. So here we would have a masculine singular subject giving us judicatus. Up above we would have had a neuter singular giving us scriptum with a um. Next we have eusisti. So since I've broken it up like this, you can see that isti is the ending here. So isti is one of our finite endings. We have isti it, imis istis erant. So second person singular, isti it, and that's the perfect active, which you know it comes from the third principal part, eusi here, and then it is the indicative because we don't have any subjunctives going on there. We haven't learned the perfect subjunctive yet anyway, so don't worry about that just yet. So it is second person singular, perfect active indicative, finite verb. Okay, the second to last one is paratis. So paratis, again that is, you might be thinking, maybe second person singular, but because I told you it comes from the fourth principal part, it must be a perfect passive participle from paratus aum. So here that long is is an adjective ending because it's from the fourth principal part. So perfect passive participle here, and We don't really know. It could be masculine, feminine, or neuter. They all have that long is ending, and it is plural, either ablative or dative. Unclear. We'd have to tell from context. Okay. Lastly, we have proficiscibaris. So baris is our ending here. Sorry if you can't really see that because of the glare. So ris, our ristor, is a finite ending. It's that second person singular, and it is passive, or sorry, not passive here. It is active because it's a deponent verb. So it's second person singular imperfect from that bar. So you'd have bar, baris, batur in the imperfect. It is indicative, not subjunctive here, and it is, in fact, active because it's a deponent verb. Okay, so go back through the video, make sure you understand why you might have gotten wrong anything you did. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer them, and I will see you all later.